Jen.
Well, you might as well stay up here.
The next slide. Oh, just, no.
Thank you, how are you?
Our smell.
Okay, so the next issue I know is a passionate one for some of the people sitting in here. Citywide trash removal. The purpose and the goal as part of the city's commitment is investing in our neighborhood and cleaning up in our neighborhoods, giving our quality of life to make a nice place, Jackson an attractive place. So we're looking at one contractor for trash removal for single-family properties, 1 to 4 units.
What about recycling?
And it would include recycling. So the trash removal, the citywide trash removal would be a more efficient way to collect trash. The services would include weekly collection, recycling, a monthly free bulk item, I think. Is that what we're shooting for?
That's how it will be bid, yes.
That's how it's being bid, okay. Competitive bidding will save taxpayers who may currently be paying $300 per year or $410 with recycling. They're going to save money. It's going to take a significant stress off our streets. It's going to keep our neighborhoods cleaner. We're going to provide recycling services, which I know I don't have right now. And trash cans would only be in the street in any given neighborhood 1 day per week, making it easier for inspectors. Inspection of residents that are leaving cans out when they shouldn't be. And right now trash is blowing around. We've got 17 haulers coming through in and out of our streets.
We have 19 registered haulers.
19.
Probably more than that.
Yeah. And so on any given day, you might have 3 to 5 haulers coming down those streets.
I got a letter from the city years ago, because I moved from the country, we had to take our keys to the road. I had a nice shiny can. I got a summons or a warning in there, but fined so many days in jail if I ever did it again. The city does it all over.
Put the cans at the
If you
street.
bring it to the road, there's an ordinance in the city record says that you can be fined and then put in jail.
If you put it at the street.
I thought
If you take it from
residents
the
could put it
front of
to
your
the
house,
street on the parkway, but the collectors, they had to put it back into the
and
yards.
they don't. They leave it on.
That's
I
what
have
I
one other comment
thought it
over
was
here.
supposed to be.
Do we have a local hauler or contractor that can cover the entire city?
That's been a question that's been asked quite often. So I'll let Pat
Or are we
cover
gonna divide
this.
it
We,
quarterly?
let me kind of handle the question, sir, that's important, but let me grab the question here. The ordinance actually says currently that you are to leave your garbage cans in the back. The garbage hauler has to go around back, get it, dump it, and take it back. That's what our current ordinance says. So, remember where that came from. That came from the fact that we don't have a single hauler system. We have a system where anybody under the sun can have a pickup truck and go pick up your garbage and undercut the next guy. And what's happening is, when I first got here, I thought it's kind of unusual because I've never seen a city operate like Jackson does when it comes to garbage hauling. And when I asked the question, why don't you regulate people who are dropping brine and diapers out the back of a pickup truck on somebody's street? Why don't we regulate that? I was told we can't legally regulate it, but it just took a Google to say that the DEQ requires us to regulate it. Because I couldn't understand why the city would be punished by the DEQ and cited for if we had a Vector truck and we were out sucking out a catch basin or a manhole and we spilled a little bit on the street. That's a severe violation. If we don't report it within 24 hours, there's a lot of penalties. I find out that garbage haulers are held to those same standards. So then we passed an ordinance about 6 months ago that had to have people get their trucks inspected. So what's happening now is trying to figure out a way that we can make it more efficient, because right now the city's spending about $280,000 a year out of your taxpayers' money, and I guarantee it, it's not in your ward. It's in other areas that have areas where some people don't pay for garbage collection because we don't make it mandatory. So we're paying about $280,000 a year that we can't collect because there's nobody living there, or the house is abandoned, and it switches to another owner, and we get this kind of thing happening all the time. So it's going to save us in that respect, but it also is going to, like Laura was saying, that there's a lot of different wear and tear in the streets. You know, garbage haulers, at least the bigger ones, they have a huge heavy weight per axle when you have a back hauler garbage truck. It's huge. We call them pavement crushers in the industry. That's what they do. They're huge. That's why a lot of communities put large gutter pans in when they build streets. So if a garbage hauler is going down, his right tire or his left tire on either side, wherever side he's going on, is on a heavy concrete pavement rather than the asphalt that's there, because it ends up breaking up at that point. So we're trying to figure out a way to make it more efficient. Any community that's done this that I've known of in my career has saved a significant amount of money. You know that Leslie just did this and saved a significant amount of money. Adrian just did this and saved a significant amount of money. The community I came from has been doing it for years, and the charge there is $26 a quarter for garbage pickup by one hauler. It's not that way here. Many of you don't pay anywhere near that.
I think Jackie just told me she's paying $62 a quarter.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Wait,
sorry.
John
He had
first.
one more question. If you could read
We're
it.
asking about the bidding process, if you had a local contractor that would be able to meet the
We do. I've been in contact with several local contractors. Individually could handle this project.
whole city.
Yeah, there's about, we assume there's probably 10 to 12,000 accounts of 4 units and below. Communities like Leslie have probably 2,500 accounts. And we have, we probably might, it wouldn't be unusual to see 12,000 accounts inside the city of Jackson. That's where your savings is. Can you imagine if somebody's coming down, I was talking to Republic the other day and I was talking to Dave Evans, at some point when you go down a street, and I've got 40 homes on that street, and I'm only picking up 2, and I've got to stop, get out, go behind somebody's house, and in some of these neighborhoods, the garbage haulers don't want to get out of their car. Some of our police don't want to go behind some of the houses in some neighborhoods, let alone a garbage hauler. And they pull that thing out, and then they go around the house, they dump it, and they go down several blocks, and they pick up one more house. It's incredibly inefficient. Republic was telling me, and they're a big hauler, a Fortune 500 company in Adrian, and they said, even if they lose the 2,200 accounts they've got here inside of the city of Jackson, it's the right thing to do, because what's happened in the communities that have done this, and by the way, we just searched for 3 days, and Laura's got this up right here. There's 223 communities inside the state of Michigan, all the way from very large communities all the way down to communities of 1,100 people that have a standardized, centralized garbage collection system because of the benefits that they've received as a result of that. And the biggest benefit, even with a closed flow county like we have with an incinerator the county owns, these numbers I'm sure will drop substantially. Now,
What's a closed?
a closed system is we have an incinerator here that the county owns, and when you pick up garbage, it cannot be taken out of county. It has to go to that incinerator, which means the price has a tendency, and I guess their bonds are being paid off this year, but it's a pretty high price. But that doesn't make up all the costs of what people are seeing in the high elevated garbage collection prices. As a matter of fact, unless you live way out in the country and you have a house every 2 miles, I've just never witnessed the kind of increase, the high cost of garbage collection that the city of Jackson has. And when we were calling around to some communities to find out whether it's mandatory, do they include recycling, people would stop us and say, well, what are you calling about this for? Well, we're thinking about doing this in Jackson. And people are like, the city of Jackson? I mean, you don't have this system already? People were shocked that we were doing it the way we were doing it, which was really nothing because we don't mandate. We got probably 30% of the houses in this town that don't get garbage collection at all.
That's going to stop.
Because it'll be mandatory, and then you have inspectors that will follow it up. It's worked in every community. What they've done is these inspectors go along, and what happens is the hauler, we haven't decided yet, because obviously the second reading is the next meeting, but whether or not you collect, either your franchise with the company, which means we're giving you the right, like a cable company, you have the right to franchise in this community, and here's what you have to do. Here are the rules. And you have to bill the customers directly, like anybody would if you were getting a cable bill. And then the council would bid that out, and they would take the best qualified bidder in the price. Those prices are, I imagine most of these bids, if not all, will be lower than you're paying now. But that's how you regulate that. And if they report them to us, then our inspectors will enforce it. They'll go out and see something. You got it, and it's not the tenants like in a rental unit. It has to be the property owner that provides the service.
Why haven't they been doing it already then?
They should have been doing it, but we don't have an ordinance that requires it. We've never had that ordinance.
And then is it going to end up like the cable? Once they get it, they're going to keep raising the
Absolutely.
price.
They can't, because they'll have a contract with us. And you can talk to any community that does this. They have not seen these increases. As a matter of fact, when I went to Dundee 24 years ago, we had $28 a quarter. We were 23 when I left, 23 years later. It actually went down $3 in 23 years.
We should
In
stop
a
the
quarter.
cable company from doing
Well, but they're federally regulated, but this is via franchise, or the city could bill it as part of the water bill. I wouldn't suggest that because it puts the onus on the city to start being the bill collector. We would do that, but the city would get a portion if you expected them to be the bill collector for the company. So there's a lot of ways to do this, and that goes through the bidding process.
John had a
Well,
question.
a couple of things. One, a comment. This is the only town that I've ever lived in where you had to go and find your own provider to pick up trash. Where every place else I lived, the county, the township, I was in Willis before, which is near where you came from. The township provided a company to come and do it. And when I remember the most is I had like a washing machine I didn't know what to do with. And I said to the gentleman, I don't know what to do with this washing machine. And he says, we're up for a contract renewal. I'll come up to your garage and get it and take it away from you. Because
They do that.
we're told that we're supposed to do whatever we can. And when I first became a city councilman about 7 years ago, the first question everybody asked is, why do we have so many trash haulers in the area, you know? Because it was an elderly lady. She had about 3 different trash haulers that were coming through. And she said, every morning I'm wakened by these trash haulers that are coming through. That every day there's a different company coming through. The only problem that I have, I love leaving my trash in the backyard and letting them come and pick it up. Because that way I don't have to worry about what day is trash day.
And unfortunately, we haven't found one of the 223 communities that does that. And remember why that exists. I mean, that exists for a reason. Because at some point, and I've gone back and asked other people that are many, many years, and some of you know this, lived here a lot longer than I have. But when you've got every street, sometimes having 15 trucks a day going down your street, and different days, there's never a day where there wasn't garbage out in front of a house. The whole idea here is to be more efficient, is to be able to have Kirby's that are between 60 and 93 gallons. They're with the rubber wheels on. You take them out, and whatever, if anybody does this, Emmons has the ability, they'll have one man there, they would hook it on the back of the truck, they dump it. Like Republic or somebody like that, or Northwest would have arms on their trucks, and they're computer controlled. They'll take them and dump them, and they don't have to have a man on the street. But they're going, they've got, every time they stop that truck, they get 4 stops, right in a row. So that's what we're hoping will happen here, and quite frankly, if it doesn't come in, I think council will have to reevaluate what they're doing. I mean, it's not.
What are you doing about elderly people? My mother-in-law, for example, isn't gonna be able to take her Kirby out to the curb. How do we
But we
take care of
don't
those
want her
people?
to, because we don't want her to fall and break a hip.
Well, I don't. The answer to that is I don't know. I mean, there are a lot. Every one of these communities we asked, the ones we were able to get a hold of in the last 2 days, said they don't accommodate that. The only accommodation they have for senior citizens, they have some discounts, and if you pay a year ahead, you get different discounts, but not for hauling stuff out. And they intend for family members and so on. There's not, you know, at some point, the reason it was done in the past was not to accommodate senior citizens to make sure they didn't go to the, I mean, God forbid somebody falls and breaks a hip. But the whole idea is to help family and neighbors, to help people like that. It's not something.
Well, she does have a grandson right now, but he's gonna be moving away before too long. So.
Well, we had a question.
She's got a lot of family.
We have a question over here first.
I don't know if it's really a question or if most of it got answered, but I know right now I only pay $180 a year, but I do have to do my own recycling and big items I have to take off myself. I do know that they do pull in the back of my driveway, and I really like it. That way I don't have time to take it out to the street. But I think what covered it might be if they gave us, like you said, Emmons provides you with the garbage can. Like with mine, I buy them at Menards. If I don't leave them in the back of the house, then the lid's blowing down the road because the guys don't ever put them back on there. So I guess that might solve it if they're providing. But yeah, it's pretty
I think in this
inexpensive.
case, if you're going to do this, you do it right, and you would have the same color can. So if they're up front, it's uniform. It's 1 day a week on one street. So it's not as if it'd be 1 day a week.
I know what I do like with the guy that picks mine up is it has to be bagged. You know, you probably see debris in the road and stuff because the Emmons, and you can throw whatever you want in there. You can throw the diapers not in a bag, and if it spills, who says the garbage guy's going to pick it up? My garbage guy won't take it if it's not in a bag, and the bag has to be intact. It cannot be ripped, or it stays in my garbage can, and it's my responsibility to clean up. So I think that makes it nicer too.
I think that's how my mother's is too.
Yeah.
We got a problem over there, right around the corner from me, and it's a city problem all over. And that's you guys that let the place, like a garage full up of garbage, bring a 20-yard dumpster, and then it sits there for several months. because there's no ordinance on how long the dumpster can sit there. It's up to the hauler if he needs his dumpster.
That's a problem, and a lot of those cases are the ones the general taxpayers are paying for because we can't collect against the person who abandoned the house or lived there, or a renter that was there. That's a real problem.
Sometimes they're living there. They just
I'll
go
give
to
you
their
an
garage and
example.
sit on garbage service.
Last year we
Wrap around.
Last year, we emptied a garage on Francis Street that was two dumpsters full of baby diapers, as if somebody brought them there specifically to dump them in this garage.
You got a
We
garage
find
right-
front, back porches full of this stuff. It's incredible.
We got a garage right beside the Loudon Jackson ice cream place. They own the first house next to it, and the garage is right to the ceiling full of garbage. And that's a health issue because I checked the other dumpsters too.
Was the Kirby's
We'll look into
gonna be
that.
part of this, them furnishing the Kirby's and part of this?
I think that's how it's envisioned to be bid, but the council hasn't made that decision now. If they pass the second reading, then I would put together a proposal in front of them of how this bid spec would look. And I suspect that the company would have to provide the Kirby. Because remember, I mean, think about this and why you wouldn't have a one-year contract. To garner the number of Kirbys you would need, that's about $1.5 million worth of garbage containers. So you got to give somebody a long-term contract at a set price to encourage them to take that kind of expense on.
Betsy's been waiting, and then Jerry.
I just want to say that years ago, I've heard this from Sue and Chuck Krasinski, whose father was the mayor of Jackson, that we did in fact contract with the city, or, you know, through Emmons. We had Emmons as our garbage hauler, and we directly paid Emmons. Why did that stop?
Actually, good question. Dave Emmons and I spoke about that. He says at some point I started doing this, and then pretty soon people started contracting, and the city never enforced. He told me this specifically. He said that the city never really backed up going and saying, hey, he's supposed to be picking up garbage here. That's been some years ago. He's gone way back. He said it's been decades.
I
So-
think it was the reason everybody thought they had him is because they were right in City Hall.
Yeah.
They had to,
Yeah,
that's where-
but it really wasn't mandated by the
I don't
city to
think it
use
was
Emmons,
law.
but then he started losing contracts.
Well, he could have got too expensive. I mean,
That-
they are
that's what-
Well, they
expensive,
moved
that's
him
why
out
I
of
use
City
it.
Hall.
It
With-
wasn't
done
done
this way,
Yeah,
though,
but
they'll
the
be under
theory-
contract.
What they're saying is if the city contracts as a whole, which is what he did way back when, he didn't get too expensive.
Must have not got his contract in writing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I mean, if in fact it works, I'm wondering why it didn't work then. If it's such a good deal, why didn't it continue on? And you're telling me that City Hall at that time didn't back it up.
Well, I don't, see, the thing is I don't think Dave would agree that the city actually contracted with him, like we're proposing. I think what's happened is because Dave happened to be the only garbage hauler in the system, he told me at the time that he was the only garbage hauler that actually was located, like he is now, inside the city with his business. And that he just had most of the accounts. And I don't think he ever said he ever had all the accounts. But he said little by little it started whittling away, where you had more people coming in and the competition started driving out. But what happened is it didn't drive down the price. The competition didn't drive the price down. It drove it up in this case. Because what happened, he needed that many people to survive. That's why when you have 10,000 accounts, that's a big cherry to offer somebody as a contractor.
Jerry?
My wife and I, we recycle, and there's just the two of us, and over the years, she's learned how to cook the meals just so we don't have a lot of leftovers and garbage. So our garbage is Northwest, and they pick up once a week. Well, we may only have like a garbage bag, half a garbage bag that we just set out into the street. Now, if they got one of these things that I've seen on TV where they come and pick them up, or the cart, I really don't.
Yeah, those big things are kind of tacky, and like me,
I don't like
my
to look
neighbor
at
have a
them.
shared driveway, we would probably only need one if we
But
needed it.
I have a family and I entertain, and so I need a big one.
Yeah.
Well, there's going to be different sizes.
Well, and the thing is,
Please
this
everybody.
system could never work if you tried to please everyone.
Right.
At some point, you got to standardize stuff. So what you may not use, I mean, because the way it's proposed now, it's a Kirby, and you'd have one between 60 and 96 gallon Kirby for garbage and one for recycling, which means you could also do, and it would be one source, so it would be plastics, cardboard, everything in one Kirby. They would separate it. That's how it would be bid. But there's some people there's people in town that share service. between the community. I mean, and the mayor happened to be one of them. He told me, he says, I share with 3 people. And he says, his price is going to go up because they're used to sharing a service, and that's not going to happen now. It has to be per unit because that's where the benefit are. Because you're right, you do have families here that need more, but you have other people that need less. But at some point, if somebody had to build, trying to based on how much garbage flow you had, it would be incredibly
Yeah, that's too much.
administrative
How are you
nightmare.
proposing to have it paid for? I mean, do the residents pay the?
Residents pay it directly.
Yeah, just like they do now, but the whole idea is to bid it would be cheaper.
Would it be with a local contractor?
We don't
Since
know.
we're-
I'm gonna give you an example.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
You're-
I'm going to give you an example. I've talked with Laura about this. We've had some discussions. Is that when we started tearing down houses, and I'll give you an example. We looked at local preference, and we were doing that. We were only bidding tearing down houses with local contractors. And guess what happened to the price? We were getting prices at $15, $16 a square foot, sometimes $30,000 to tear down a house. The minute we open that up statewide, the bids come down to $5 a square foot. We were getting houses torn down for $6,000, $7,000, some 10, depending on the size of the home. So, sometimes if local contractors want to compete, what I find in a lot of communities is that they want nobody to come in their community and compete with them, but they want to go to other communities and compete against them. It doesn't work that way. It works both ways. So if you want to compete, and if we were to go out there and say and give somebody a monopoly, all it's telling the taxpayers is that that business owner has the right to charge you as much as they can get from you because there's nobody else to get that service from. It doesn't mean that they're bad contractors. It means they're going to have to sharpen their pencils because the citizens of Jackson deserve to be able to pay for the service we've talked about at the lowest possible cost they can get it.
Well, right now, I do have Emmons, and if I go away for a couple months, or if my mother, who lives up the street, goes to Florida for a few months, she doesn't have to pay.
This will be accommodated. The snowbirds will be accommodated. That was one of the issues.
Directly, and that's what we
Right.
do.
Gentleman in the back, wait, John, and then over here, and then John.
Real quick here. The one thing is about all the other services, I think it's been a blessing to Jackson because of what they've accomplished through the years. They've stopped a lot of crime. There's more, they don't know when the garbage truck's gonna pull up. They all got cell phones. They've helped neighbors that's fallen. All these different things. That's more people out there, just like the police is, which they've cut down. You don't have the police service we used to have. That's more eyes out the road. I think it's very important for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just curious, like, if someone should not pay their garbage bill, like your water bill, you shut it off, do you shut off their garbage? Or how is that collected on people who don't pay the bill anyways?
They'll still have to provide. They'll be mandated to still provide it. And that's a business model that somebody has to take into account. If you're a business owner and you're in sales, you know that you're selling something, you know that there are delinquencies. You have to bill into your thing. So when they bid this, and I talked with Phil Duckham, I said, if you understand in Modern Waste, I said, if you know you're going to have, he goes, I got 25% of my people don't pay me now. I said, well, how do you do that? Do you eat it? Or do you just charge everybody else and they just don't know it? And he smiled. Because that's exactly what you do. It's a business model. So, and we're going to tell people that you can't not provide the service. If you're not getting paid, at the end of the year, the city will specially assess it to that property if we can get the money back. And when we get it back, we'll give you a portion. We're going to take a portion for the hassle of having to go through the legal nightmare to collect the money. But at some point, you've got to make it mandatory, and you've got to back it up. The city's got to have the strength to do it. And I think, in this case, I think they
John,
have it.
then Brian, and then.
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying. If a city company is competitive, they do get the advantage because they live in the city. And I think that's a very positive thing, and it should be that way. But when they do take advantage of that by thinking that they can overbid because they're in the city, we'll go outside the area.
And you're right. There has to be that idea that you could choose somebody else if you had to. If you don't,
Look at couch. Brian?
I've got about 3 questions, really. You said the residents are gonna pay for that. Would you define residents? Is it
Well,
people living in the house?
it'll be property owners.
Then that's not necessarily the residents, is
We he's talking about tenants.
it? Right.
No, I misspoke. What I meant to say, and earlier I did say, is that these will be attached to properties. Every ordinance that any city enforces is attached to the property. If you don't comply and there's a fine because you parked your car illegally, it's going to get attached to your property.
Yeah.
Everything that we do gets attached that way because that's the only enforcement mechanism that a municipal government has, unfortunately.
Well, sewer and water is not like that, for example, but the other.
It could be though. It absolutely could be. We just don't right now. And actually we do. You just aren't one of the people who has been delinquent like that we've had to attach their property. But after a year, we do attach their property.
What are you doing with vacant properties? And also, if these bonds pay off at the incinerator, what's that, what kind of effect?
That's a very
is
good
that
question.
gonna have?
The vacant properties, obviously vacant properties have to be registered, so we can keep an eye on and make sure somebody's not squatting or whatever. But obviously you don't have to pay for garbage service at a house that's not occupied.
Now, my point is that the garbage that gets thrown there, who's...
Well, there's nothing we can do about that. Your city will still go up and pick that stuff up. But as you well know, this year we've taken down 135 homes inside the city of Jackson since we started this program. And we're seeing a huge difference in how you've been asking the police officers. We're talking about police officers. Those are the people who are going to come to the council meeting. They're the ones that are saying, wow, this has made a big difference in a lot of neighborhoods, getting rid of these dilapidated homes. And so we are doing that. And as for the issue with the question you talked about with a closed county versus a not county, one of the issues that Republic asked me when I talked to them is that to make sure that you bid it both ways as an alternate. And it says that if the county decided somehow the incinerator was going to shut down and the county be an open area, then what you'd want to do is say, give me a price that shows this is a closed county. And then give me an alternate so that if it changed during your contract, you would have to drop to that price because now you're allowed to take your garbage outside. I talked to 3 haulers today, and they all told me that, first of all, even in a closed county, this price will drop significantly from what people are paying now, and including recycling on top of it. Then they'll have, then if the county was open again, you'd probably save another 30%. That's how much that means to the...
So if you have Andy
had a...
Well, this gentleman has one.
If you have a lease with someone and they're to provide their own garbage service, then this unfunded mandate that you're going to put on landlords now, how are you going to deal with that?
Say that again, Brian, I'm trying to...
Well, if I have a lease with someone who rents one of my properties, and it's in the lease that they're to provide their own garbage service, like they provide their own water and whatever, their own cable, their own phone, and their own any other utilities. And you're going to step in and say, no, now the landlord's got to pay for that.
What happens when a water
that's
bill...
easy to say.
Brian, we had this happen with you. What happened when a water bill doesn't get paid? Is your tenant? Did we throw your tenant out? No, we come after you for it.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Oh, we could.
Well, you don't.
Yes.
That'll be another issue.
But you don't, the tenant pays a
It goes out
deposit.
to the property tax.
But not every tenant pays a deposit. You may have that, but that's not the case with everybody.
That's why you have the water deposit.
But some people don't do that. Some landlords don't opt to do that.
No. What do you mean they pay the water bill, the landlord
They
pays
don't
the
have
water
it.
bill?
We have had some people that, they get the water deposit, and then they've used water, they've not paid their bill, and there are some that have exceeded their deposit that they've got, and then the tenant moves out.
Yeah.
And we have no record where that tenant is, where
Right.
anything else is.
That's right.
The only recourse the city has is to go back to the property owner.
That's not happening.
It has.
Brian,
No, it
it is, we are doing it. I can tell you we're doing it in some cases. But Brian, let me tell you, first of all, I don't agree with an unfunded mandate because this is a mandate, but it's not unfunded. Because quite frankly,
No, I'm gonna fund it.
how you work it out with your tenant is between you. We're saying that if the garbage doesn't get picked up and somebody's not paying it, then you're going to be billed. It's your responsibility between your relationship, you and your tenant, to make sure they get garbage. What happens if your tenant said, and one of your houses said, I'm not paying for garbage, and I've got a lease, and you can't make me do it? What are you going to do?
It's in
You're just not going to have garbage pickup at your rental. You're going to, but even if it wasn't, you got to sue the person to make them have their garbage pickup. You would make that tenant in some way have the garbage that they said they would pick up. That's another legal proceeding. But the issue is, eventually, you are the one responsible to make sure your tenant or you have garbage pickup. You do the same. You're a responsible landlord. I know you are. So you make sure they do. You may not pay it because you get people to comply. But if there are a lot of landlords out here that don't make people comply, and the city taxpayers, the people who are paying this bill, are paying for it. That's what we're saying.
That's just like keeping the heat on so the pipes don't freeze.
Absolutely.
The tenant's responsibility. But if he doesn't do it, the
That's true.
And you had a question?
Waste management is big business. Now, you're saying everything that's picked up here will go to that incinerator out there, right? You guys won't have it going to entities outside the city? It's just a closed thing, we're just all going out there to incinerator?
Actually, that's a county ordinance, and I'm not trying to throw John under the bus, it's been there for a long time, and we don't have the legal authority to tell people they can take it outside. As a matter of fact, we have to restrict them from taking it outside the county, because it's a county ordinance that we have to comply with. It's not a city ordinance.
You just slapped them on the hand.
No, we don't.
You know, it was a couple of years ago, and somebody did it, and they just, sorry.
That was a
John,
hauler.
what's the county talking about doing on this? when
Well,
bonds
the
expire?
bonds will be paid off on the incinerator by the end of the year. And then we're going to take a good hard look in December as to what the needs of the incinerator are. Right now, we're providing all of the power for the Department of Corrections, who at this time are building their own power plant. And so once the Department of Corrections build their own power plant, we're going to have to look at what we can do with that excess power and whether it's worthwhile for us to keep the incinerator going.
Andy, did you have another question?
But that's private, you can't spread that.
I just was wondering, because that will have an ultimate decision on if we're, have to renew bonds or if they open it up to a open county system versus a closed county.
Okay.
If you was talking about a recycling container and a garbage container, guy's got 6-unit apartments, is everybody gonna have two containers?
6-unit apartment has dumpsters typically. We're not gonna regulate anything over 4 units. We asked some property managers that we knew controlled a lot, that managed a lot of the properties in town, and we were thinking about restricting it to 2 and 3 units, and that's when they come up and said, no. Landlords that have these larger units that are 3 and 4 unit buildings will actually recognize the savings if you required and you regulated it 4 units and under. And that's why we did that. It was purely conversations with 4 property managers.
Well, the incinerator thing, that's up there, but what are we doing? Because I know the landfills ran out. I mean, they're almost out, start storing. Where are we gonna buy another piece of land? The county already got a piece.
Actually, you don't have to have a landfill inside the county to do this.
I know that.
And a lot of,
before you bring in Canada stuff and we're burning it here.
and hopefully the recycling stream reduces the garbage stream, which is what we're trying to accomplish here too.
Carol?
I just want to ask a quick question on the recycling. Did I understand you to say that if there's a recycle bin, it wouldn't be a separate bin than your trash bin? Okay, and did you say that all your recyclables will just go in there like loose, or how, I mean, right now my husband goes to recycle and we have like different bags in the basement, cans, plastic, etc. How would that work?
It's just single stream.
It's a single stream. That's a new way they're doing it now. I think Modern does it now too. But what you do is you have this bin, and when we started looking at these small bins, we thought, and we were hearing our feedback, we were hearing people who recycle, so that's not enough. I want cardboard, I want plastic, I want cartons, I want air bottles, everything, and they throw them into one container, and then it gets separated at their station. So, and believe me, I've followed haulers before to make sure they're actually recycling stuff they said they were recycling. And some, not saying here, but other communities, they don't. They say they are.
Go ahead.
I don't really know if you came to a conclusion about what he was saying with the garbage and your tenants, but if you're talking about garbage being commercial like Comcast, well, if it's the tenant's responsibility to pay the garbage fee and they don't, then it should go on their credit report and not on the house. I mean, if they signed it, it should be their wrath that it ruins their credit, or maybe them moving into somewhere else, but it shouldn't go onto the house if that's what he has signed.
I agree with you. However, there's a big difference in cable. You can choose not to buy cable. You can choose to put the rabbit ears on and watch 4 channels and have that selection. But we've got a public health, safety, and welfare issue here. This is disease, vermin, things that in an area that you have an urban area like Jackson, it's shocking that there are roughly 25 to 30% of the living units don't have garbage hauling at all. And that creates a bigger issue. And believe me, my inspectors see things that would shock you. I've been through some of these houses where you go into a house. We went into a house last year that had garbage hauled up, and there were human feces piled up 3 foot against the wall all the way around. I mean, this is here in Jackson. And the city is trying to straighten that out, and unfortunately, we have no teeth to chase somebody like a Consumers Power or Detroit Edison's would, because they could say, you're gonna move in our, they've got bigger arms, because if you're gonna try to turn on power in Spring Arbor, you still gotta deal with me, you're gonna pay your bill one way or the other. The city of Jackson doesn't have the ability.
We went out to California to see our grandsons here a couple of years ago, and while we were gone, people moved in behind us. Well, when we come back, they had a big pile of garbage in their back, and I said something to them about, you're not supposed to have this garbage like this. And the woman said, it's not garbage, it's compost. And I was looking at it, I know what compost is, and I'm saying, eggshells, this is not compost. And the skunks, it brought the skunks back, it brought the raccoons back, and the possums back that I had pretty much trapped and eliminated. And I know there's a thing that if you're gonna have compost, it has to be in a rotary bin to keep it going.
We have similar ordinances.
Martha?
The people you were just talking about that don't get trash service right now, garbage service, it's not gonna fall on us to compensate for them, is it?
Well, I think at some point what's going to happen is in any business model, that happens. It's one of those issues where if I have a credit card, I'm getting charged an interest rate because that credit card company is assuming that there are certain people who will never pay them, and it's getting shoved onto you. You just don't know it. And what happens when these bids come in? These companies will assume a certain amount of delinquency. They have to. So if that's the case, technically, yeah, the people who are doing the right thing end up paying more. You just don't know what that is because you're in a situation where you probably didn't know the difference. And in this case, I'm 100% sure, I think, that you're going to see a huge reduction in price. So you're not going to see an increase of price as a result of this because it's just not happening. Anybody I've talked to, even the haulers that don't want to do this because they have a chance of losing 3,500 accounts in the city, are saying, it's going to be cheaper for people because you got so many houses on one street. Like I said before.
Anybody else?
What's the estimate of the term of the contract you're looking at?
Well, we tried to amortize the cost of buying $1.5 million in things, and what happens is we want to make sure that local people aren't disadvantaged. And what I say by that is that we've got smaller haulers here, medium-sized haulers, that probably don't have enough of those Kirby's in any one site around the nation they could pull here that are the same color they need and everything else. They would have to purchase new equipment. And we have to make it so that they could amortize those things. And we started looking at having a 2-year contract. It would actually be like $30. I mean, like every quarter. I mean, they got to make back that amortization plus their interest. So at some point, we looked and said, if you did a 4 or 5 year contract, it's doable and still have a huge savings to people. So that's why we were trying to do a long contract. And quite frankly, if we can get somebody to tie into a contract that long in this environment, all the better.
Yeah, the longer the better, yeah.
But there's a lot of there's a lot of haulers contacting the city now. I've heard this, and now they're like licking their chops because they see this as a huge business opportunity to be able to have that many accounts in such a densely populated area.
You gotta dismantle people too. Another year,
we
don't make it. I mean,
well,
you can lose. Someone's gonna go out of business.
Well, you're right. There's be some small haulers that won't exist. But that's also the same case that if you decided to open up a Pizza Hut in town and somebody sells pizza, somebody's going to probably go out of business. That's what happens. It's like the Dollar General. I mean, not that we're all in love with Dollar General stores, right? But there was one built on Cooper that looks nothing like any Dollar General I've ever seen. It's getting a tremendous amount of business, and we've been told by other things that other business operators of Dollar Generals and Family Dollar, they're losing customers to the nicer store. Well, Jackson deserves better. It deserves to have nicer stores and nicer sites and nicer things. And if that means, unfortunately, the market bears that the person on the low end of the totem pole that wasn't willing to invest the money is the one that's left out, that's the market.
Yeah, but the only way they could do that was the city said this had to be to fit in the neighborhood. Yeah. It wasn't just something.
You're right. We told them it had to fit in the neighborhood. There's building and design standards now that tell you that you have to make something that's complementary so that your neighbor isn't taking a hit in their value of their home any more than they've been punished already by property value decreases. That's right. So we want to make sure that people, like we said, this council recognizes that people's, principally their wealth is in their home. And you've seen what's happened since 2009, 2008.